going to be taking a look at Wicked today, yes. And I would
hmm
say this is much more in your realm than my realm. With that being said, I wanted to ask you a few questions on this as we kind of get into it. So I just
Okay.
watched it for a second time and I watched it actually. Here's what I said: I watched it at 2 times speed, which was actually helpful for me. I actually got the story a little bit better because I tended to tune out some during the music stuff, and I wasn't able to really pay attention. I actually enjoyed it at a faster pace. With that being said, this is a prequel to The Wizard of Oz, correct?
Yes.
Okay. It's because The Wizard of Oz don't I've seen that technically the 19 what is it 37, 39 movie. I saw that, but I never saw the original. Actually, I think I watched it to the tune of Pink Floyd. So this is the prequel to The Wizard of Oz, and this is only the first half of it, correct? Because in the play itself there's two parts, and this ends at the intermission of the play itself, correct? So they're coming out with
Right.
the second part. Okay.
Right. So this is one of the many prequels. So there's a variety of prequels out there. I think there's the Great and Powerful Oz, which is another movie with the woman who voices Meg from Family Guy. I forget her name. Um, but
Oh.
that's one version of the backstory, which it focuses solely on the wizard instead of the Wicked Witch. And then there's the actual book of Wicked, which is completely different than the actual musical, which is also a prequel. And it gets more into the political aspect of the world of Oz. And then you have the musical, which again, yes, it's the prequel of The Wizard of Oz focused on the Wicked Witch's story, but it's also only the first part because they broke it up into two different movies.
Okay. And correct me. So this is the gist of what I got from the movie. And that is it's it's
Okay.
obviously this magical land. The Elphaba who becomes the Wicked Witch, she's kind of this shunned, you know, outcast character who goes to this magical learning school. Apparently she has powers beyond that of anyone really, and um her time there is what have you, it's spent doing all the different type of stuff that you might see at like a college or high school type of movie. But really what stuck out to me is that from an early age she was enamored with the Wizard of Oz because he liked green emerald colors and she's green and all that. So she kind of like looked up to him and everything. And it turns out that the the Wizard of Oz, along with some other higher ups, are manipulating the people in this land uh, to control them essentially. But they require Elphaba's power to. I'm not entirely sure what all they want her to do, but I know there's like the grimoire. I'm not sure how they pronounce it in the movie, but they require her power to be able to read from this magical book to do what, I'm not entirely sure. I mean, I know in the movie it she turns the animals into the winged creatures and stuff. And that's another little bit of a thing. So I know they are making the animals out to be enemies, it seems.
hmm
Why, I'm not entirely sure. Like, do you have any background on that?
Yeah, so you're jumping all over the place a little bit. So basically, it is extremely political, right? There's, like you said, the story focuses on Alphaba, but there's multiple layers of why it focuses on Alphaba. So if we want to focus on just her character development first, she was a character who came out green, right? And I think the movie does a really good job at trying to tie that to modern day race and colorism. But she came out different from what other people expected, which, as we know later on, is a result of the father's infidelity. And because of that, she has kind
Hold
of
on, can I
this,
pause you?
yep.
Can I pause you? So yeah, you brought it up, although I don't think it's the father's infidelity, right? Wasn't it the mother's adultery? She was the one
Oh, you're
who
right.
was
You're
having
right.
a
Yep.
relation with somebody else, right? Yeah. So
Correct.
that's kind
Yep.
of what I picked up from it is this child is cursed essentially because the mother was being an adulterer.
Yeah. So
Okay.
she is kind of like the recipient of her mother's sins, if you will, because again, she is the product of another relationship with a married couple, or a married couple has a relationship or a child out of wedlock or something like that. Well, you know what I'm trying to say. But um again, because of that adversity, and it's never clear if her father knows that she's another man's child, but he treats her like she's not his child the entire time, and so one would assume. But because of the way that she's treated, and because her mother died when she was young, she just feels ostracized and isolated. And so that is all of her character arc, just fighting adversity and becoming, she's just always thinking 10 steps ahead and making herself presentable in what she thinks needs to, how she needs to protect herself. And then so there's that piece going on, but then there is the political side of Oz happening as well. So their father is the governor of Munchkin Land, which he has no really political ties to the daughters at all. But as they go to Shiz, which is the college, they learn more about the political environment of the overall community of Oz. And then that's when she becomes enamored with the wizard, because again, she was treated so poorly growing up, so she thinks, okay, there's this magical being who can change my outward disposition so that I can become acceptable in society. And so that's where the infatuation with him kicks in. Little does she know that's her biological father, but that doesn't come out until later down the line. um,
Okay.
but she has this infatuation with him because again, she's a impressionable young woman. She's going off to college. She thinks that he has all of these powers that can help her out of her current situation. So she goes to Shiz. She starts learning how to hone her individual magic. um, Long story short, she meets the finds out, or the wizard. She finds out that everything was a farce. So he
Mhm.
does not have special abilities. He doesn't have powers. He's just a mechanic, if you will. And so, because he's a mechanic and people in Oz have never seen anything like that before, they attribute that with wizardry. And she realizes, no, he's a fraud. I have been training this whole time to become this sorceress to help create the illusion that Oz is powerful. And so that's when he tries to recruit her, because she does have actual magical abilities. And they want to use her in the whole political scheme of Oz to continue that propaganda to the people that, yeah, it's the Wiz, when it would actually be her. And we've seen the wizard do that with other people like Madame Morabelle and other wizards that he's taken advantage of. So that's kind of like her journey tied into the overarching political landscape.
Okay. A few questions on that. One, when it comes to that political landscape, like why are these powerful sorceresses and sorcerers, for that matter, listening to this false wizard who has no magical ability to begin with? And secondly, what's the usefulness or utility of this magic in this land? I'm not entirely sure that either.
So, I mean, to relate it to modern day politicians, the Wizard of Oz is essentially Donald Trump, right? So he essentially is this politician who's a businessman back to where he came from, and so he seizes an opportunity to lead an organization, or to lead this community through the best way he knows how, which is through persuasiveness. And so they listen to him because the actual wizards listen to him, which there are very few, but they listen to him because they see that idea of people need something to believe in working. And that is the idea that he
Hmm.
pitched to them. And so at that point, once people bought into it, what could they do? Go up against the wizard and then become the most hated people in Oz. So I think he used his power of persuasion. And like I said, there are so many different side stories that focus on the wizard. Um, and his, again, persuasiveness and how he came to be who he is. He was essentially, I forget what his real name is, but they talk about it in the book and they also talk about it in that movie that I referenced, where he was a circus performer, who used to just get over on people because he knew how to persuade and navigate relationships with people, and so he leveraged that skill set once he got to Oz to become one of the most powerful people, the most powerful man in Oz.
Okay. Yeah, I mean I get how you can make the allegories between, politicians in the movie and the show and all that type of stuff. I
Mhm.
guess and since this is a prequel, I would assume that it would answer the question like, so was this land of Oz in like chaos and turmoil before and somebody needed to step in and bring order to the land? Or like were
So
people starving?
no,
Did they need to do that? Like what
no.
happened?
No, that's the thing. The wizard, he got a slick tongue. He made it seem like that was the case. And these people were like, "Oh, it was so bad because he told us it was so." But it wasn't.
So it's a lot of
Actually, things
stupid
were
people.
yeah, a lot of stupid people. It was much more harmonious. People had more rights and things like that. He found this land. He was like, I want to find a way to capitalize off of this, and he did. So, and he actually says it in the movie. I don't know if you remember that line he says to Elphaba in the new movie. Um, People, you got to give people like a villain or a really good
Yeah, an enemy to hate. Yeah,
an enemy
it
to
brings them
hate, and
together. That
so
and that's true. Yeah.
yeah, so that's what he did, right? He made animals the enemy. So in Oz, they're, as you know, they can talk. They're more of citizens, but he comes from Omaha, so he's like, yeah, animals should not be speaking one, but they should definitely not have rights.
Wait a minute. So he was actually from quote unquote our world and somehow got
Yes, yep,
into Oz. Okay, kind of like
yeah,
what is it,
and
Dorothy?
he
Kind of like how Dorothy did.
yep. But he knew
Okay.
about Oz though. He was cognizant of Oz. He was trying to figure out how to get there. Because
Mm.
there's like interdimensional travel, um, and that part is still kind of undiscovered in certain texts. So if you read the book, if you watch the movies, it's not 100% clear, at least to me, how he got there, but he knew of the existence of Oz and he wanted to get there because he knew about the Grimory
Wasn't
and he wanted to get the Grimory
okay. That makes
yeah,
sense.
to see if
Wasn't
he
there
could
like
like
a Johnny Depp
use it.
movie or something that did that? And didn't they travel by like balloon or something to get to Oz? I don't know
Yeah,
why
so
that's
that
popping in my head.
you're talking about the movie. Yeah, you're talking about the same movie I'm talking about. It wasn't Johnny Depp though. It was the guy who plays Harry Osborn in Spider-Man.
Oh, okay. Franco, James Franco.
Yeah. Yep, James
Yeah.
Franco. Yep.
Okay.
So, yeah, I
And
mean,
now,
the wizard.
I mean, is there an explanation as to why the witches go along with this or the sorcerers? I mean, is it just they get power too, so it's they're just as bad because it's not like he
It's
has any way
access,
to
right?
control them.
Yeah, like I said, I feel like you said, the allegory to current day politicians, it's not necessarily you can do anything to me, but how can being tied to you benefit me in the long term? And so
Hmm.
it again for them, it was they wanted to have a piece of the pie once they saw that he was received so well. And again, at this point, magic is, and again, Madame Morrible says this in the movie. Magic has become so rare. There are so few true magic yielders. I believe the only two that we actually meet in the musical are her, which her powers are extremely limited, and then Elphaba, who actually is powerful. And then you hear about Glinda later on, but there's argument on if Glinda actually has powers or not because we see her one way in the Wizard of Oz with the snow and the bubble, but then when you see it in the movie, it's a machine that was created using the wizard's technology.
Okay, so
And
they're
but
doing
she
like
either
an act.
yeah, yeah. It seems as if the way the movie is setting it up is that Glinda doesn't have any real powers. She's basically becoming the new wizard and using his tactics to become elevated in the political realm.
That'll make sense. With that said, so Shid, the university, it's not a magic university then if like everybody there doesn't have magic, right?
No, and it's
So,
not supposed to be, right? It's supposed to be different things because in the book, there's different students that go there specifically for politics to become politicians in the world of
mm,
Oz. It's again, it's a college.
okay, so it's just meant to be like a normal college, and it just so
Yep.
happens some people are magical. Okay,
Hmm.
and oh, what was some of the stuff? Well, I wanted to ask you. So from your standpoint, as a someone with theater background and all of that, what were your overall impressions of the movie, particularly because you've seen the play and as well. I assume, I don't know. You may have
Hmm.
even acted out part of that. What were your overall impressions with the movie?
Um, so I saw the movie 6 times in theaters, um, and I did it that way on purpose. So I went on opening night because I wanted to see. There was so much hype and build up around this. It's been on the Broadway circuit for over a decade, and it's been
Hmm.
performing extremely well. And so I'm like, you can't top live theater. Like you could do a lot of things virtually in movies and things like that, but you can't really top live theater because you have that human to human connection. So I was like, okay, how are they going to do this? How are they going to do a lot of the magical things, which is easier to do? I get that, but it still wouldn't have the same effect. So I went opening night. I was really impressed, honestly. I, I I at that point I couldn't be critical because I was so enamored with everything and how they did everything. The only critique that I had off the bat was that it was too long. So if you've seen
Hmm.
the original musical is 2 hours, 2 hours, 15 minutes. The movie was longer than that, and it only got to act one. So I was like, this was unnecessarily drawn out.
Yeah,
For money or for whatever reason, they
that's
decided
what
to draw
Hollywood's
this
been
damn
doing a
movie out.
lot. Yeah.
But right. It was so unnecessary. They did it with Twilight as well. So I was like, okay, whatever. I guess y'all need to recoup your money, but they did, and they're gonna make a boatload from the second movie. Um, so I went, was super impressed. Only issue was the length of time, and then I went again, still impressed. It was the Ozdesk ballroom scene for me where I got goosebumps and I cried every single time. And I don't cry off of movies, I cry for other things in real life. And I cried off that scene every single time that I saw it. And I was like, they did something special here. And then the third or fourth time, I started getting very critical of certain things. Um, so it was more so, like sets, costumes, the way that certain songs were sung. It was things like that. And I think overall, after having been critical and enjoyed it, I think they did a really good job. I just feel like there are certain things that lacked. Um, and they were primarily with Cynthia Erivo's voice, as well as Ariana
Mhm.
Grande's voice. I think as a theater fan, it's a musical theater like staple. This is kind of like a cult classic when it comes to musical theater. And when you change the music so much that it's not even identifiable, it really turns off that following. So the songs were primarily the same, but they were adding too many riffs and runs in the songs where I'm like, this was unnecessary. All you're doing is like a 2 minute song full of riffs to show that you are vocally talented. And I get that. That's cool every now and then, but it takes away from the story. So I'll give an example. My favorite song in the entire musical is I'm Not That Girl, because it really starts to show that Fierro clearly has an attraction to her. She has an attraction to him, but he's dating her best friend who he really doesn't want to be with, but that's just where everything fell. Again, her extra riffs and runs really took you out of the scene, and you were supposed to be focused on the fact that she wasn't good enough for she felt like she wasn't good enough for Fierro. She felt like she wasn't good enough for her dad because ultimately she felt like she wasn't good enough for herself. And that should have been the focal point. And then there was also like some volume issues. Like even when she started the song, you weren't aware that she started a song. It sounded like a whisper almost. And
Mm,
it really, for me, it ruined that moment for me. um, I did like the new song or the little segment of One Shirt Day that they added where they paid homage to the original actresses who play those characters on Broadway, Adina Menzel and Christian Chenoweth, because it kind of, again, it was like a love letter to the theater people who followed this
okay.
show since the beginning. And it gave them something new to sing instead of like, the stereotypical things that they could have or would have sung. And it was a really nice way to incorporate them into the movie. And then also, I found out later on, in terms of like the recording of the actual ensemble, it was individuals who actually played some of the roles who sang the ensemble numbers for the soundtrack, which I also thought was cool. Um, and then I think the last thing that bothered me was was the slave riff at the end of Defying Gravity, and everybody liked it. Her little battle cry at the end of the song. So I have mixed feelings about it. At the end of it, watching it visually, it works because it felt like, oh, you felt all of her adversity and she was just letting it out in this like powerful scream. But then when you listen to the soundtrack, you're like, they could have chose another way to end this song because there's like the staple riff, the she could have done that, which I don't think people wanted to hear. So I'm glad she shifted it. But it could have been anything other than that, like she was struggling Negro
Mm,
slave. So I was really bothered by that. And also she's a black woman too. So I don't know if that was like a conversation where she was like, oh, I want you to do this to pay homage. Um, but I think it was a poor choice. I think it was a really poor choice. In terms of the long term effects of it. But yeah, I enjoyed a lot of it. I enjoyed a lot of it.
okay. I'll have to go back and listen to that ending. I know what you're talking about, but I'll have to hear it at normal speed and see what it sounds like. I'll tell
Mhm.
you. So me coming in, I'm obviously not only a normie whenever it comes to this, but I'm not the target audience. I would say it's not because I
Right.
like musicals. There's plenty of musicals that I like, just not necessarily this particular type. And all my experience with Wizard of Oz, as I've said, it's been more so through like osmosis of the culture, right? So picking things up. So
Mhm.
again, I've seen the original Wizard of Oz, but not like the original. I saw it to the tune of Pink Floyd because they kind of sync up with that album. I think Dark Side of the Moon. I forget which one though. And then I've seen it. They make. You were talking about how Wicked the Broadway play has been out for like a decade or more. And yeah, I remember South Park, for example, kind of making fun of it with the innuendo that hey, if you take your wife to it or girlfriend,
Right.
you'll get some sex afterward. I whenever I was playing World of Warcraft, right, one of my favorite dungeons is Karazhan, and in that you get on theater, and one of the possible bosses you get is Wizard of Oz, and you have to do different things
Mm.
with those characters. So again, like I've been exposed to it. Like I'm not ignorant of the Wizard of Oz and what it is, but this is my first time I would say actually watching a true. Well, I guess aside from the one that we mentioned before, James Franco's, but I don't even really remember that one. I will say the I enjoyed it. Again, I did not enjoy it as much at normal speed, and that's probably for a few reasons. One, like you said, it's a 3 hour long movie basically. I mean, I know on mine it's two
Mhm.
hours 41 minutes, right? And Hollywood's doing this a lot, dragging stuff out. This could have been a 90-minute film. You could have cut down on a lot of things, and get in, get up, get out. That being said, I thought the every visually it was spectacular. I thought they did a
Mhm.
phenomenal job with the characters, the CGI. The colors were very vibrant. I really liked that. It felt like it was a world that they built. I appreciated
Yeah.
that aspect of it. The songs themselves, some of them I'd need to go back and re-listen to them. Some of them I probably would enjoy, like just listening to them. Most of them not so much, and that's just because with musicals of this nature, I don't like talking musicals, right? Where you take the
Yeah.
dialogue and then you sing it. I like songs like more like a Disney type musical where there's an actual song, or like Phantom of the Opera where there's an actual song, right? So I like that a little bit
Right.
more. Although again, I kind of liked. I'd like to re-listen. Even as I said, that Defying Gravity one at the end.
Mhm,
Hearing that, it sounded pretty interesting and pretty good. So I'd like to go back and listen to that. And then again, coming in for me, so in the real world, there was a lot of baggage coming in with this movie from specifically Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande and some of their red carpet appearances and discussions and stuff. So like coming in,
mhm.
there was already a lot of baggage from that side of things. Although objectively looking at the movie, it was perfectly suitable. I thought they did a great job with their singing and everything. And I'm not a song person. I don't sing or anything like that, but it sounded good to my ears. Again, the storyline, it made sense to me, especially as I the second time rewatching it, I could put pieces together. Oh, this is how we're getting from here to here to here, and I liked a lot of that. And I thought even though there were a good number of characters, they did a pretty decent job fleshing them out as to like who they
Yeah.
are, what their personality is like, so that you could understand maybe decisions or actions or dialogue that they might make out. The one thing, well, not the one thing, but one of the things that I do not like Elphaba's sister. What a bitch! Like Elphaba is, even from an early age, is out there protecting her sister, all this type of stuff, and
Mhm.
here she is, this entitled little clown person who doesn't care, doesn't want her sister around, all that type of stuff. I'm like, man, you suck.
Right.
Uh,
She
and
does,
Elphaba too. I thought
and she
Elphaba
did
was
get.
a bit stuck up.
Did you?
Oh, for sure. And that's the thing, is like you might have an explanation as to why your behavior may be a certain way. That's not an excuse
Mhm.
though, right? So okay, you're an outcast,
Okay.
all this. Like I remember one of the first things that I saw was, like, I actually really liked Elphaba as a little girl. I thought that was a very cute actress who was playing her as a little
Mhm.
girl. But the first scene I'm like, man, you suck, was in the classroom with the goat teacher, and
Mhm.
Galinda is like, he pronounced her name wrong, and she's like, it's Galinda, and then Elphaba's coming in like, well, maybe it just doesn't matter, maybe he just doesn't pronounce it, people are different. Like, shut the hell up, she was just letting them know that her name was not what he said. Like, I don't know, that annoyed me. I'm like, you kind of suck, that. You get what you project, type of thing. And
I mean,
again,
I
it
get
makes
that.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, the explanation as to why she might behave the way she does makes perfect sense. But again, that's not an excuse to then behave poorly, right? You don't have to be rude. I understand where it's coming from, but you can change your behaviors too.
I mean,
And
she called her an artichoke. Like,
she did. Well, yeah, after
if
she was
somebody
being
called
a
me an
bitch,
artichoke.
she called her a steamed artichoke, is
but
what she called
but
her. And I'd have said the same
no, but
thing,
it
because my name gets mispronounced
right.
all the time, right? Now, granted, I don't correct people because I don't really care. But if you did, I'm just like, oh,
Right.
let me let you know. This is how you say my name. Like, if
Mhm.
somebody kept calling you Travis, right? And it
Mhm.
ain't your name,
But I
you'd probably
correct
be like,
people though. That's different.
correct.
I
And should I
correct
say,
people.
shut up, you steamed artichoke? Like, no, I wouldn't
It,
call you that. I wouldn't say that. It's
no,
it's it's
right. No,
perfectly
but
fine to correct somebody. You don't need
but that
nobody's
was
even
like a
talking to you over
slur.
here,
That
Alpha
was a
Bus.
slur.
Keep your
Like
ass over.
she could have
But it was
no,
after
she
she
could have
did
told
it. It
Alphabet
was
to shut
after
up.
she did it.
No, that's fine. But why you
It
have to
was
go to a
after
slur?
Elphaba stepped
Like
in.
you could have
Why
just
did
said
Elphaba have
shut
to
up.
step
You could
in?
I'm not excusing her being a
I'm not
busybody. I'm
excusing
not.
either
I'm just
side. I'm just saying, in this case, Elphaba's in the wrong. She's got flaws too.
okay. She
Now, were there?
She does have flaws. She does. But you know what? You brought up a good point and I was gonna talk about that. I Everybody hates Nessa. Like there's a viral hate train of Nessa, so much so
Good lord,
that the actress who plays her started taking it personally, which I got annoyed with because I said,
that's
"Bitch,
stupid.
nobody was
Yeah.
talking about you. Nobody was
They're
talking it
talking
was
about
the
your character, you
character."
fool.
And
That's
everybody
the
hated the
problem with a lot of these
character.
actors and
To,
actresses
yes,
doing that. They take it on personally. We talking about your movie. Nobody came
they
out and said
do.
you as a person. It's crazy.
Yep,
Why? So was she in a
yep.
wheelchair in the
But
play and in the books and stuff?
in the musical, yes. In the books, no. And that was a major change from the book to the musical adaptation. So in the because you have to go all the way back to Wizard of Oz. Remember when the house falls on her, she has on the ruby slippers, which were technically the silver slippers. They just made them ruby for the Wizard of Oz movie so that you could see them on when it was
Mhm.
black and white. But they were always supposed to be silver. So she was never technically in a wheelchair. She had no limbs. Well, she had her legs, she just didn't have arms. She just had like two nubs. And so
Okay.
it like how do you I
So
guess
wait,
depict
that's
that?
crazy. So Alpha, so both of these girls, both the sisters, are they both born of sin? Because like, all right, clearly the one's green, but now you got another one that's disabled. You say she has a little nubbin running around. So
She was. So hold on, I'll get back to that. So basically in the
okay.
book she has two nubs, but she can walk. And she has these silver slippers because they're from their mother. And then when we go to the musical adaptation, she's in the wheelchair. Um and again she gets these crystal slippers. Um but they're not, to answer your question, they're not both born of sin to my understanding. Just Elphaba is. And I guess the father was trying to do all these different holistic medicine regimes to make the other daughter not come out green, and that caused some deformities.
Okay. Little
Hmm.
thalidomide in the
Yep.
for the wifey
And
there.
because of said regimes, the mom died during childbirth. So that's why the dad doesn't like Alpha, but he
Oh,
resents
okay.
her, thinking that, oh, I was
That's
so
crazy though,
resentful of
because the younger
you.
sister was the one that would have died. That the mom would have died with, right? Because
Hmm.
what's her name? The younger
Yeah, but
sister,
he's blaming Alphaba for that still, Nessa.
Nessa. Yeah, I know. That's what's crazy. It's like okay, so not only whatever. That's fine. So go hold up. Go back to so in real life, this actress is there's a hate campaign going on for her character,
Yeah.
but this actress is taking it personally. Is there anything else you
Yeah.
wanted to say on that?
So I think it started with her character, and then I think it flipped on her a little bit, but I think it flipped on her because she was being obnoxious about it. It was kind of like the
She,
Rachel
yeah,
Zegler effect, where she got
yes,
entitled and pretentious about it, where where
right.
it's like, all right, you're making people not like you at this point. No one said anything about you being in a wheelchair. Nobody said she like ableist comments and saying that, oh, I wish we could push you off of a cliff or something like that. They were literally talking about Nessa Rose. They were not
Roll you
talking
off.
about pushing you off a cliff.
Yeah,
She said, I'm getting death threats. No, you're not getting death threats. But
that's
I think
crazy.
that's like the actor mentality. They want something to complain about or want to be the victim in a situation. So um that's what she did. She chose that.
Well, so were there any standout performances for you or anything that stood out?
Um like either dancing, singing, or acting, or all three, a
Anything,
combination of
yeah,
all three.
anything.
Um hmm. I'll tell you who didn't stand out. I think my list of who didn't stand out is probably bigger than my list of who stood out. Um it was a, what is her name? Michelle Yeoh.
Michelle
I
Yeoh,
think,
yeah. They're
yeah,
putting her in everything now since she won that
she
Academy Award or whatever. Yeah,
yeah, but she also worked with John Chu, who's a director before, and that was just a casting of pure nepotism. And
yeah.
that's why I think people need to realize, like, okay, I want to help my friend advance and move up in their career, but at what cost? Because everybody know Madame Morabelle as a big voice, a heavier set woman, regardless of whatever race you want to cast her as. But she's supposed to have a big operatic voice, and she's supposed to have like that thick auntie or stuck up. What is it? The woman from Harry Potter with the pink, who
I
wrote
know you're talking
on
about.
their own.
Yeah,
Um, Trulani. No, it's not Trulani. She took over at some
I
point
know who
of
you're talking
Hogwarts
about.
as a head mistress. But anyway, she's supposed Madame Morrible is supposed to be kind of like a carbon copy of her, just a little more voluptuous and taller. And they went the Michelle Yeoh route, and she's also not a singer, and so that that song, at least the beginning half, was hard to listen to with all of the auto tune that they put on her voice. So I was disappointed with that, but her acting was so good for the role because that villain switch, she played that very well. But I was just disappointed with that casting. Another controversial, opinion of mine that I have is that I was disappointed with Fiero. And I know everybody loves him because he was on Bridgerton. I thought that that was a terrible casting choice. And it was a terrible casting choice because he's old. He's too old for the role. He's not a good singer, and he gay. And there's nothing wrong with him being gay. I just don't think he played the romantic energy the way that he
Mm,
should have opposite her. Because every role you see him in, he's gay. He's playing a gay guy, and he's gay in real life. So I think that's where his comfort is, and even his romantic scenes with Ariana Grande, who he's with first, they just weren't there. It was just something missing. And again, vocally, it was missing. But I think he acted the roles well, but it just felt that character fell short for me. He was just there and then he was gone. Um,
okay.
so I think those two were the biggest disappointments for me. Overall, who I was most impressed with, I guess, was Cynthia. Because I've seen her on Broadway in The Color Purple. And it's one thing to be a phenomenal actress on a Broadway stage and then transfer that to like a major motion picture. And I think she did a really good job with that. And this was really her first one. She's been in other films, but this was her first major film. So I think she did a really good job, all things considered, even with the controversy that she started but around the movie.
Right.
But but it was
But
still,
yeah, none of
she
that
still did
came
a nice
through in the
job.
movie. None of that stuff
No.
came through. I think that's why it actually was a. I mean, Wicked's a huge, Wizard of Oz, Wicked, all of that is a huge IP, but you
Mhm.
can destroy IPs. I mean, look what just happened with Cinderella, for example, and not to
Yeah.
mention a bazillion other movies and stuff lately. But I think because they just did what they were supposed to do, stuck to the source material for the most part, it became a
Mhm.
hit, and
Yep.
hopefully they continue that with the second round. I will say,
Yeah.
Dolores Umbridge was the Hogwarts professor you were thinking of,
Okay.
or
Yes, her.
the mistress. Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, and
Yeah.
okay. Well, I don't have a
Well,
whole lot to add to that. I mean, again, because for me, I don't know who a lot of the people are or what's going on. I do agree with you though with the Michelle Yeoh stuff. And even what's the wizard's name? And the actor,
Jeff
Jeff
Goldblum,
Goldblum. Yeah, Jeff
he
Goldblum.
definitely did an audition.
He's himself. He's that's the
Yeah.
thing with some of these actors. Particularly those that are well established and they're older. It seems to be more of a paycheck. They just show up and they are
Yeah.
themselves. And Goldblum's kind of been that way. Honestly, I feel like Goldblum's been that way
Yeah.
since Jurassic Park. But he just shows up and plays himself. And Michelle Yeoh, I think, is a wonderful actress in the right role. And this particular one, anything with she still can't speak English all that well, right? And you take that aspect and pair it with needing to sing.
Mhm.
Why? Why are you doing that, right? Uh,
Yep.
but overall, again, for me coming in as somebody else, I thought it was good, very serviceable.
Yeah.
Were there
Yeah. I
any
think for
last words
where
or
I
things
am
you
now,
wanted to say?
um, I think I'm just really excited to see the second movie. Act 2 of the musical is my favorite part of the show. Those are the best songs in my opinion because they're kind of like what you mentioned earlier. They're not so much like speak singing, and they're actual things I would listen to by themselves.
Mhm.
And it really shows her turn into a villain and Glinda's turn into a politician, really mimicking the wizard's behavior. So I'm interested to see what that looks like on film. So I'm excited for November to come around.
Oh, that comes out this November, 2025.
Yep. Hmm.
All right. Well, when that comes out, I'll be sure to watch it sooner than later so that we can do this whole thing again and give our viewpoints on the second one.
Yes.
All right. Until next time.
All right.